Okay, fellas, welcome back to some more SBC Gaming news, and today's episode is going to focus entirely on new handhelds. We have some pretty big news coming out for the RG35XXSP and a new console called the Cube from Anbernic, as well as a slew of other handhelds. And if you can tell from my background, I'm at me grandmom's house, so I'm recording on my travel setup. It's going to be a little bit less than ideal, and the audio is going to be a little bit subpar. So hopefully you bear with me, fellas. This microphone is fine. I just lack the mic technique to use it properly, as well as the knowledge on how to EQ it properly. Okay, before we begin, I'll do the same thing I did in last week's episode. Well, I'll go over some comments on the last episode. We got Ilker Yoldas, happy to help, great content. So Ilker helped me make some. So Ilker helped me with the video for the game music emulator. I had some difficulty getting it to work, and I was like, why ain't it working? And I was getting super frustrated. So I remember Ilker is the one who recommended I check it out. So I asked him, hey man, what's up? What's up with the app? And I didn't know, but only a few systems work on the Miyoo Mini. Now I'm not sure if it's a limitation of the hardware or if it's a limitation with the software. But yeah, basically you're looking at Mega Drive and then Tandy 1000 and a few smattering of other systems. Yeah, so not every system's gonna work, and I think the file format has to be VGZ. But yeah, that's what it is. Thanks for the help, man. I appreciate it though. Alright, now we have a comment from Poe the Fallen 1333. Great video, my friend. Thanks for the news. Keep up the great content. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate the kind words. So Poe asked a question earlier about using the standalone version of the PCSX rearmed emulator, and when you load it through Onion's UI, it will load the game, but then it won't load the configuration for that game, and so you have to load the game within that standalone app. And I was like, why is this doing this? And I tried to look for why, and I ran into like a brick wall just because I just don't know enough. So my thinking was it has to deal with how Onion UI is loading the game. So I was looking into the source code to figure out where Onion will load the game with the emulator, and I couldn't find that bit of source code. But I think if you take a look at that, we can figure out why it won't load the configuration as well. Or if you take a look at the standalone app, if it's open source, if you take a look at the code and see how it loads the configurations, we can kind of try to find a solution there. But yeah, I ran into a brick wall, so my bad, I couldn't figure it out, but it is what it is. We got RZFi here saying subscribe. Thanks, bro, appreciate it. And we have Austin Preston. Been really enjoying your content lately. Keep up the great work. That was a fantastic episode. Thank you very much for saying that. Like, I didn't expect people to leave positive comments for this section, for the SBC Gaming News section, because I just make it for fun. And I know it's not the best quote-unquote content, but like, I do it for fun. And I thought no one would watch it. So I think it's great. Thank you for the kind words. And we got Gerard Alfacundo 6721. I meant what I said, bro. Thanks for the shout out. And the AOK looks sweet, but I'm sticking with the deck. Thank you for the compliment. I really do mean it. It means a lot when people say they like what I make. It's the highest form of praise I can get. And yeah, truth be told, every console that comes out, I wish I can get it just for the sake of reviewing it. Not even if I don't make a review on it, I want to tinker around with it, figure out how it works. And then whenever someone asks a question about it, I can give them a solid answer on how to fix the problem they're having. It's really hard to troubleshoot something that I don't own, because I have to look up what someone else is saying, and I can't verify if that information is correct or not. I can just relay it to the person, but it's better if I have the device in hand. I don't have the money for that, so also I think it's kind of wasteful to have all those devices myself, but yeah. Alright, we got Ilker again saying, by the way, I ordered an N17 based on your recommendation and should be coming in a few weeks. Can't wait to try out all the different custom firmwares they have for it. Oh, this made me a little bit nervous because I'm like, oh, they got something based on my recommendation. What if they hate it? Like, What if someone buys something that I was positive about and they're like, oh, this thing sucks, and I would feel really bad because they wasted money. But yeah, hopefully you'll like it. I like the M17. I definitely think it has a lot of flaws, but for the price and a little bit of work, you can get a really playable system. I beat Aria of Sorrow on it, and I got the good ending. So I grinded all the souls, and I got the good ending. Try not to spoil the game, but I might go back and try to get 100% on it in terms of like maxing out the levels, the gold, the souls, the items. And then if I feel like it, I might try to hunt all the achievements, but the achievements are kind of hard for that game if you want 100% it. So I don't know. I ain't got the time for that, but we'll see. But yeah, thank you for all the kind comments. I appreciate it. All right, we're going to start with a repeat of a PSA from last week. We got this post from Clayton Jr. on the Retroid subreddit, and this guy was using a privacy card, which is a virtual credit card, and he had it set up to only be used at Retroid, and he got a suspicious charge on it. Now, the charge was $0, and it was from a payment processor, zip.co, so it might not be fishy, but either way, I'm just mentioning this. It's better to be safe than sorry. And if you buy something from Retroid recently, I would take a look at whatever payment method you use and make sure it hasn't been compromised, because it'll be a headache. If your credit card number got stolen, you have to cancel it, get a new one, and then revert all the charges that someone else made on your card. So just putting this out there just in case that there was a leak and it might have affected someone else. Also, this is a nice way to learn that you should always use some sort of buffer between your payment information and a retailer. I live in the US, and even living in the US, I think it wouldn't hurt to have, either a PayPal account or a privacy card while shopping on US retailers. I think just if you're touching the internet with your payment method, I think it's safe to have a buffer. Now, obviously, I prefer to use PayPal, but obviously if PayPal gets hacked, then I'm screwed as well. But there's an extra layer where they have to do more work to get to your actual payment information. But yeah, just take that as you will. All right, in the spirit of new consoles, we're going to start with this hilarious new console. This was posted by Beaumained in the SBC Gaming subreddit. So if you have heard of the McNugget Tetris clone, it was a meme console. There's a clone now, and I think it looks nice. The original McNugget was just a plain nugget. This has some colorful art on it, and you can play some Tetris. I think that's pretty cool. So if you wanted one, apparently these are available. Now, I don't know where to get it. Just the source was Taobao, so you probably have to do some work to get it shipped to you, but if you wanted the McNugget for some reason, there you have it. Okay, this next post comes from a YouTube channel called Nerl. The original Reddit post was on the Steam Deck subreddit, and it got deleted by the moderators because they don't want you talking about ROMs. I believe they did that by mistake because typically recompilations are legal in that they only have original source code and they don't have any of the game assets or code, and that you have to supply your own ROM, and which is why usually these recompilations last. But this is big news in that someone has found a way to decompile N64 games very easily. So what they're doing is they're taking that ROM file and then they are reverting it back into the raw source code, as far as I understand it. If I'm incorrect, someone can correct me in the comments. But yeah, so, and then the reason why you want the source code is that you can recompile it for a native system or native port. So if you wanted to run it on Linux, you can compile the raw source code to make it run on Linux without emulation. And that's the best way to play. Also, you can do a lot of stuff like add ray tracing. Take a look at that screenshot there. Man, that looks incredible. So you can do stuff like have higher resolutions, ray tracing, anything that you can do through the graphics commands, you can intercept it and change it and have the games look incredible. I think that's pretty awesome, and it's going to be available for all N64 games. Now, obviously, it's not going to be as simple as pushing a button and have the game be converted to Linux. automatically, I think it'll take you most of the way there. So I think this is great for N64 preservation. I think it's great for fans of N64 games because we'll have native Linux ports and those games will run a lot better than emulating. You'll have a lot more options. I believe the Majora's Mask decompilation is ready. It's been ported to Linux and it's very easy to use. You just have a file and then you supply your own ROM and then it'll run Majora's Mask and it'll have all these nice quality of life features. And I think technically speaking, this isn't the same as emulating. I believe it's the same as how Proton works, in that the game is just executing its code and then the code to the GPU is being translated into whatever Linux uses. Now, again, if I'm incorrect, someone will correct me there. But yeah, I think that's pretty awesome. This is sweet. N64 games will be kept alive and they will look better than they originally did. So you can check that channel out. If you like Majora's Mask, you can look up how to get the port for Linux and play that natively on whatever emulator support it. Okay, now we're moving on to the news, and we have this post from Kivareb on the ROG Ally subreddit. Or is it Kiva Arab? My goodness, I'm terrible at reading names. But anyways, a couple of people posted this, and it seems to be legitimate. Microsoft was questioning people with these surveys, and as you can see in the post here, they have pictures of the ROG Ally and the Lenovo Legion Go. So this led people to believe that Microsoft is in the process of developing its own handheld PC. And I think this falls in line with some rumors we had from Microsoft earlier. If you remember a little bit back, there were rumors that Microsoft was exiting the console business. And that was kind of funny in that there were grown men legitimately tearing up and saying, "Oh no, what are we gonna do?" And I'm like, fellas, it's just a console. Like, we still have PC if you want to play Microsoft games. Like, I don't understand why people will be crying. But yeah, it's okay to like a product, but to that point, I think that's a little weird. But yeah, anyways, Microsoft is rumored to have a handheld along with the next version of the Xbox, or have the handheld be the next Xbox. This kind of makes sense because Microsoft has been shifting to more of a cloud service. They want to really push Microsoft Game Pass. They don't want to be a hardware manufacturer anymore, it seems like. They want to be a platform provider, a service provider. And this makes sense in that it costs them way less money and it's much more stable profit because, they're not making the games. They just charge people to have the games on their platform and then they give them a cut of the profits from the subscription fees. It's kind of like the Netflix model, maybe the Spotify model, and this kind of makes sense. So I feel like their next handheld will be probably revolving around Microsoft Game Pass as the main way to play games. Now, personally, I am a staunch supporter of consumer rights, and I don't really like this move to a world where the consumer owns nothing. We're gonna own nothing and we're gonna like it. I know people don't care too much, but when you lose access to something that you paid for, I think you will care then, but by then it'll be too late. I think that's why it's really important to support services like Good Old Games. I think that is one of the few platforms where you actually own the game when you pay for it. There's no DRM, there's no online connectivity required, and you can save the installer offline and then just use that over and over again as long as your computer is compatible with that. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, so I guess we'll just have to embrace the future where we own nothing and we're gonna like it. Okay, now we have this post from Connected LL, and 7-Eleven is teaming up with Team Tetris. My goodness, let's take a look at the console here. It's going to be $30 if you want to buy it. It's probably going to sell out as soon as it goes live, so bookmark it and just hope you get one. Otherwise, you're going to have to make a purchase at 7-Eleven using their app, and then you get an entry into a raffle to win one of these. But yeah, let's take a look. Man, it looks so dumb, and I know it's not gonna be good, but I want one. The screen is very tiny. I believe it's smaller than 2 inches, and the ergonomics on that is terrible. Just look at that. It curves inwards, and that is the worst way to design a controller. Every controller you use is curving outwards, because whenever you curl your hands around the controller, naturally, it goes out. So to go in is the opposite direction. And I saw the pictures here. Just wanted to poke a little bit of lighthearted fun at these models. This girl is looking at a screen that's turned off. It might be on. Maybe the brightness is terrible. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But then they have both thumbs on the buttons. And I'm like, is that some sort of advanced technique? You know, I figure you want to move the pieces. Unless they're really good and they line them up already and just dropping it fast. And look at this. Look at the ergonomics. So if you have a Miyoo Mini Plus or a smaller console, you know you hold it up with the pinkies. This guy's holding it up with his middle finger. I'm like, dang, dude, that's gonna be a tiny handheld and it's gonna be super uncomfortable to hold. Yeah, it's stupid, but I want one. So I'm gonna see if I can get one. I'll make a review if I can get one. The top lights up and everything. Yeah. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I want one. So I'll wait and see if I can get one. Alright, moving on to the RGB20XX. This was posted by Chili Monster in the SBC Gaming subreddit. And so reviews were kind of tepid on this device, but I want to bring it up because it seems like that people who wanted it really like it. There's a couple of benefits to this handheld. For starters, the battery is not behind the screen, and there were some posts about the battery being super flawed. Quality control sucks on the RGB30, and it seems like it's slightly better for the RGB20SX. But yeah, the battery isn't behind the screen. People have complained about it overheating quite a bit. In fact, there was one post recently that I'll feature in the next episode, where the battery caught on fire. So if they recharged it again, it most likely would have exploded. That's not good. So, you don't want to mess with a bad battery. If you don't believe me, just Google all the videos of rechargeable batteries exploding and you'll see why I'm so afraid of them. But it seems like the build quality is just a little bit better on the 20SX. And since the battery is not behind the screen and everything else, it seems to be a little bit more stable in terms of dissipating the heat. But there are some issues. So if we take a look at this post from LifeB5637 in the PowKitty subreddit, the audio is messed up. This only affected 2 people in the subreddit so far, and it doesn't affect everybody. But if you have messed up audio, there is a solution. But why don't we take a listen for a second? So any audio with 2 channels, the left channel doesn't play for some weird reason. But we do have a fix from Chili Monster. So they were mentioning if you have mono enabled in RetroArch and have the mono DSP plugin, all 3 channels sound properly. So if you don't fix it, the audio is still bad and the headphone jack too, if I recall correctly. So this may be affecting a small amount of people. If your audio doesn't sound right, you kind of have to turn on the mono setting in RetroArch. Alright, we have another post from Let's Play Meta. The PowKitty 20SX battery status is wrong. This is common for the RGB30 as well, but the battery won't display the proper usage. You don't know how long you have left to play. There's a couple of fixes for this. You can install ArcOS, and that will display the proper battery capacity. Or you can install the latest version of Rocknix, that seems to fix it. And you may also have to unplug the battery and then replug it, and that may fix it as well. So the battery stuff is super finicky on these devices, and you're gonna have to fiddle around to get it to display properly. Now, if your battery is charging super slow or it feels super hot, I would open up the device and make sure that your battery hasn't expanded. And it looks weird. If it does, stop using it immediately, unplug the battery, contact Powkitty for a replacement, and then they may require you to ship the battery back to them. You know, that's not safe because it can explode in the mail, but if that's what they want, that's what you gotta do. But yeah, just make sure your battery is safe. Okay, now we have this post from Red Hair in the Miyoo Mini subreddit, and they were saying that they really like the Miyoo A30. The reason why I posted this is a lot of the reviewers were picking on the A30, saying it has a lot of flaws, as well as the RG28XX. And the reality is, you know, the people who use it might have different opinions than reviewers. So everyone has, you know, slightly different opinions on something. Just mentioning this in case you wanted one and you heard that it had a lot of problems. There are people out there enjoying it as is, so you might want to check it out if that's something you wanted. Now, before we get into updates for the A30 and the RG28XX, if you wanted a case for your A30 or 28XX, I would recommend just using a sock. That's right. This post comes from Microbyte in the Anbernic subreddit, and here they just took a pair of small children's socks, just cut off the bottom and then sewed it, and it makes the perfect case. So these are meant to be put in your pocket, so they're designed in such a way where the screen seems to be better protected, and the only thing you have to really worry about is getting scratches on your screen if you don't have a screen protector on, and maybe if you care about it, scratches on the body of the device, and a sock would prevent most of that. Now when you put it in your pocket, you may want to put the screen towards your leg if you have the tendency to run into, you know, pocket height objects. I never ran into an object with something, you know, in my pocket and broke the screen, but there was a post where someone was saying that. I was like, that's kind of weird, but if you have that problem, you might want to put the screen on the inside. Okay, now we have this post from Onions Are Gross. I believe this is Russ from Retro Game Core's account, and he was mentioning after his A30 review, he found out that for some reason, the default setting is to have the normal 2x video filter on for Super Nintendo, and that is the reason why the performance was so terrible. If you watched his review, Super Nintendo was struggling and he had to overclock to get it working. And that was really strange because I'm like, Super Nintendo should perform well on that chipset. And if it's struggling, then maybe there's a huge problem with the device. It was just the manufacturer. For some reason, they enabled that filter. And if you turn it off, it's going to work fine. So if you're worried or you're on the fence about buying it because you heard about the Super Nintendo performance, it's just a simple video filter fix. We have another fix to the A30 as well. This was posted by KeyBrilliant5623, and it comes from the RetroBreeze YouTube Twitter account. The firmware fixes the screen brightness. Now, I'm not really sure why they use this picture because it seems like the brightness is the same. It's the same on the left-hand side, and it's brighter and same on the right-hand side. I don't know why they use that. You know, if I were comparing and contrasting, I would put max brightness for the A30 and then max brightness for the 28XX and show how there's a difference, and then the difference after the firmware update. But anyways, that's neither the point here. So the A30 was markedly dimmer than the 28XX, and honestly, it didn't seem to be a big issue, but if you're playing outside or in direct sunlight, you do want a lot more brightness available because it's going to be very hard to see the screen. So this firmware should fix the screen brightness. I'm not entirely sure how much brighter it gets, but it should be a little bit more usable in direct sunlight now. It's another thing fixed. Okay, now we're moving on to software fixes for the 28XX. So I alluded to the possibility of custom firmware or custom operating systems coming for the 28XX in a timely fashion because it has the same chipset as the 35XX 2024 H and Plus versions, and those already have Knulli, MinUI, and muOS available. And guess what? We have the first public alpha of Knulli for the 28XX. You can get it from this post here, or you can just go to their GitHub page and you can download the version for the 28XX. I want to mention here, if you are installing this for the first time and you're used to like Onion OS where you just format the micro SD card and copy files over, For these devices, it's a little bit different in that you are going to burn an image to the micro SD card. So that's very different. You're going to have to use software like Rufus or Balena Etcher. And most people would suggest to use Rufus because there were some issues with Balena Etcher. So Rufus worked a little bit better, so people suggest to use Rufus. But you're taking you're just essentially cloning that hard drive or micro SD card when you do that. There's, I believe, 6 partitions, and they're formatted in specific ways. And the hardware needs those partitions to function correctly. It's still pretty easy. You just click a button and it burns the image. And I think the only problem you may have is either making sure it's bootable or non-bootable. That's pretty much it. For Batocera or Knulli, the reason why you may want it is that it offers a lot of features in terms of how the operating system looks. So if you are a person who wants your handheld to look flashy or fancy, Batocera may be for you. And on the flip side, if you don't want that, if you want to keep it as simple as possible, MinUI has also released for the 28XX, and this was posted by Shadow59, and MinUI is developed by one person. I think there's other people too contributing to the GitHub as well, but Sean Inman is the main contributor for MinUI. So we have MinUI working on a 28XX. It's a very simple operating system, very minimal, and it's just focused on playing games. So if you want that, you can check out MinUI. We have another update to another operating system. Now this hasn't come out for the 28XX yet, but I suspect it may soon. This is muOS or the 35XX Plus and H version. They just abbreviate to PlusH. I'm not sure I like that, but it's, I guess, faster to say. So the main thing is I believe they're taking the changes or updates from Batocera and incorporating them. They have 64-bit support and the latest version of RetroArch. So you can take a look at the release notes. As we can see here, we have 64-bit support. That should bring better performance to emulation. Theoretically speaking, we don't know yet because probably gonna have to do a little bit of work to get everything working fine. But yeah, if you want another system, this is a little bit more minimal than Batocera, but it probably has more features than MinUI, so somewhere in between. Okay, now we have a new micro handheld. This is the MagicX XU Mini M, and this was posted by Shadow59 in the SBC Gaming subreddit. And as you can see, here's another device with a 2.8-inch screen, and supposedly it's going to have dual Hall effect joysticks. It's coming out in sometime in May. And here is another post from Shadow with a little bit more details on the specs, and I would take this with a grain of salt because I read somewhere that MagicX lied about the specs for their previous console, the XU10. So take this as you will. It's supposedly supposed to have a RK3562 for the CPU, which is going to be theoretically more powerful than the A30 and the 28XX, 1GB of DDR4 RAM, and supposedly a 2600 mAh battery. Let's say the specs are correct. That's going to be interesting. I want to see what the pricing is. If it's priced kind of near the A30 and the 28XX, this may actually be a decent choice. Kind of hard to tell how the device is going to work. Looks like it has bottom firing speakers, which is okay. It's better than rear firing, at the very least. Yeah, we'll see. The thing is though, like if I'm playing systems that are more modern and require joysticks, I don't want to play it on a mini console. Like I want a larger screen. My eyesight's fine enough for the 2.8-inch screen, but like, yeah, like there's no point to it. Like I want a portable system where I'm just gonna game on the go, and I'm okay with playing like PS1 and below because, you know, you're not gonna be sitting there for hours. If you are, you probably want something a little bit more ergonomic and comfortable. Alright, this was posted by FuzzDump in the SBC Gaming subreddit, and it's not a new console, but it's an old one. It's the Trimui Smart, and it's in black now. So if you wanted one of these consoles and you're like, man, I don't like any of the colors, they have a simple black color now. I think it looks pretty good. And people have recommended this console if you want a micro one, so this is another option as well. So you got the A30, the 28XX, and then we got the Trimui Smart, and now the MagicX. Was it again? MagicX XU Mini M. They gotta work on the naming scheme. It's a little bit hard to remember all of these. Alright, now we're moving into the heavy hitters. We have so much news coming out for the RG35XXSP. This is the Game Boy Advance SP clone, and Anbernic has been doing something very smart and is highly effective. What they're doing is they are taking a look at what other companies are releasing and seeing what gets the most hype, copying that, making their own version, and then releasing it earlier than the competitors. And the funny thing is, they're paying attention to all the feedback from people online and using that to direct their release. So for the SP, we have the same specs as the 35XX 2024, the Plus, and the H version. It runs the H700 chipset. It has the same gigabyte RAM, GPU, all of that, same 3.5-inch screen. And this one has Wi-Fi and everything else. And the funny thing is, if you look at the previous models, they had this really ugly light-up logo on the front of the handheld. And most people are like, that's super ugly. I think I remember Saito Stockman said, that is one ugly logo or something like that. And I was like, yeah, man. I was scratching my head because I was like, why would they do this? Like, it looks hideous. It looks like something made for children, like toddlers, not people who want to play games. So then if you look at their final version, there is no logo. And there's no analog sticks as well, because I remember some of the comments for the Miyoo Flip was that, oh, this looks nice, except I don't want analog sticks. And I was like, okay. Like, I don't really care either way, but if I don't need him, I prefer not to have him, because I just care more about the ergonomics than having an analog stick. So they remove the analog sticks, and there are none on this device. So people are like, I want this one. So they've been paying attention to what people are saying, and then they're releasing the same thing, and they're just releasing it faster. So they're crazy, but it's working. So this is from the official Anbernic YouTube channel. These are all the different colorways, and they look super nice. The transparent blue looks nice. We got the retro gray color. I really like this silver color because this is paying homage to the original silver Game Boy Advance SP. And then we have a transparent black, and they all look super cool. Now, the only thing I'm worried about is that I've heard that the transparent plastics are a little bit more brittle. And if they're more brittle, I wonder if the hinges would break more easily. I included this post as well. This is from Retro Gordon in the SBC Gaming subreddit. And the only reason why is I was like, Anbernic is learning. They're looking at these subreddits. They're paying attention to what people are saying. They know how to copy the meta, so to speak. If you watch their preview or unboxing videos, they're nailing it in terms of copying what other popular YouTubers are doing. And they realize, hey, if you include a picture of a cat or a dog, you get automatic updates. They know. They're very self-aware. So I thought that was kind of funny. This has dimensions. It's roughly 30 millimeters. It's a very chunky boy. But yeah, there's pictures of the Anbernic Cube as well, which is a clone of the 1:1 aspect ratio devices like the RGB30, the ZPG A1 Unicorn, and yeah, they made their own, but we'll be getting into that really quickly. Alright, now Russ from Retro Game Core has a first impression video, and he likes the device, and I think most people who got it pretty much like the device. And here is a shot from his preview. I recommend checking it out. But here it is. Yeah, it's really big when you open it up, and it's pretty small when you fold it. And I like this because I find the ergonomics a little bit lacking for the Miyoo Mini and the RG35XX. It's an okay size. It's an okay feel. I just wish it was a little bit wider and a little bit longer. And as we can see here for this device, it is definitely a little bit taller, and that should make it a little bit more comfortable to hold. And one thing I was worried about was the sleep function not working, but it apparently works very well. So we take a look here.
Let me give you a demo of what that's like in
A little bit of sneak peek. Yes, that's right. A working sleep function, and they do have quick save and quick resume. So you can set it in the operating system to turn off when you close the lid, or you can set it to sleep and then resume when you open it. That works in stock OS. And then you can also set it as for the other devices as well, where if you tap the power button, it'll make a save state and turn it off. And then when you turn it on, it'll auto load that save state. So that's available too. And Russ tested out Knulli. It seems to work day one. So obviously there's some features missing because they have to add them in for the SP. But Knulli works on this. I don't think he tested on MinUI. So yeah, we have custom firmware right away that's going to work for the SP. And in my opinion, I might be in the very small minority here. I don't mind stock Anbernic software. Like I have the 35XXH, and I don't mind stock. I don't find a reason to need to switch to a different operating system. It's not impacting my enjoyment of playing these games. I'm not, like, what is Battlesera gonna do for me in terms of enjoying the game more? I'm not gonna have more fun just because it looks prettier. Okay, I just want to play the games on it. But yeah, I'm in the minority. Now we have pricing information. So we have this post from MacRedBlue or MacRedBlue in the SBC Gaming subreddit. It will cost $58.99 plus shipping, and shipping will start May 22nd. So roughly a week from now, it's going to be shipping. I believe this is going to sell out very quickly. The response to all the footage and reviews and previews has been pretty positive, and people are going rabid for this device. I don't know why. People really want this, so it's probably gonna sell out very quickly. In my opinion, I always give this advice. I think it's best to wait. It's okay if you miss out. Your life isn't gonna be over. The first batches are always the worst, and there's always some issue, and then that gets fixed later as they release, more and more revisions of the hardware. So, if you really want one, I guess you gotta get ready to pre-order, but in my opinion, I think it's okay to wait. I want one too, but I think it's okay to wait a little bit. Alright, before we get into the Anbernic Cube, we're going to cover the ZPG A1 Unicorn. So this is a device with a 1:1 aspect ratio screen, and it is going to have the Dimensity G99, which is a pretty decent chipset. It's way more powerful than what the RGB30 has, I believe. Going to have 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage space. There is going to be a model with 8GB of RAM and double the storage. And we can take a look at the price. This is local or domestic pricing. So roughly $126 for the 6GB model, and then $140 for the 8GB model. And that does not bode well for the foreign pricing. So foreign pricing is usually a lot more, and that might push it close to $200. So for the A1 Unicorn, there were a few listings on AliExpress that were supposed to be pre-orders from not the manufacturer, and somehow I'm taking that with a grain of salt, but they were roughly around $225. And the reason why that's a big oof is that while the Dimensity G99 is pretty decent, it is nowhere along the same performance level as a Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. So for $225, you can get a 4 Pro at that price, and it's going to be better in almost every single way. And I'm just like, why would I pay that much money? So when I saw the initial pricing, I was like, they have to bring it down. Seeing the domestic pricing, I feel like it might actually be closer to $200. And if it is, I think it's going to be dead before it comes out, because you're getting really close to Pocket 4 Pro territory. You're also going to be competing with Anbernic's Cube, which I believe will probably be priced around $150 or $160. I won't go into why. So it's just like, why would I pick hardware that's just inferior in almost every single way in terms of performance? That said, though, I hope it comes around $150, because I think that is worth this device here. Take a look here. We can see DS being emulated. It has a touchscreen. and it has a rocker D-pad. Yeah, it looks pretty good. I mean, it looks pretty good for DS. They show them touching the screen later. But yeah, hopefully the price is low enough, otherwise it just won't be able to compete. Right here we have a funny picture of the Anbernic Cube. This was a fan edit. This was posted by MeatShoe69 in the SBC Gaming subreddit. And yeah, people have been joking that it looks like a Fisher Price console. Now to me, I'm not gonna lie, I would get that colorway. Why wouldn't you, right? I think it looks tacky and gaudy to the point where like you wanna get it. It looks so ridiculous. So this was posted by CB990. We'll get into these specs. It's really high-end, and I don't know why they did this, but we have a Unisoc T820. That's the same chipset as the Anbernic RG256. That means you can play some PS2 games. I don't know why they did this, but that's a really powerful chipset. It has 8GB of RAM, 128GB of storage space. Supposedly gonna have linear triggers, and then a 4-inch 720p screen. 5200 mAh battery is gonna be really decent too. So the thing is, that is a really powerful chipset. Again, the reason why I brought that up is like, if the ZPG A1 is releasing with the G99, there's no way it can compete with this if it's the same price. So we have another post from CB990, and this is from Anbernic's official YouTube channel. Take a look here. They're playing 3DS games. So this is a touchscreen as well. And take a look here. It looks like it's running okay. So we already know the performance level. Just look up how the RG556 performs for games, and it'll perform likely the same on this. So yeah, I mean, that looks neat, and I'm gonna estimate the pricing is probably gonna be cheaper than the 556. So the 556 goes roughly around $200, and when it goes on sale, you can get it for about $170. And the lowest I've seen it was $150, and that's kind of hard to get. So we can expect like a price of $170. That has an OLED screen. This one doesn't. So I'm expecting it to be closer to $160 or $150 when it goes on sale. It may be listed at $200 or $170 list pricing, and then you can get it for $10, $20 cheaper whenever it goes on sale. If it's anywhere below that, it's going to be a killer device. So I'm interested in this because the RGB30 has a cult following. The only problem is the build quality sucks on that device. So if you get a bad one, it's going to be terrible. If you get a good one, you're going to be fine with it. But Anbernic's build quality is definitely better than Powkiddy's for most devices. So if they release this and it's priced pretty on the low side, I think it'll be a hit. The only difference is the RGB30 can be purchased for roughly $60 to $70 when it's on sale. So I feel like this is going to be double the price of that. Okay, now we're going into handheld PCs. This was posted by Triblade 2001. So the Asus ROG Ally has a refresh coming out. It was rumored as a 2024 model, and now we have an official name for it. It is the ROG Ally X. That's a terrible naming convention. I don't know why anyone would do this. It's like the Microsoft Xbox Series S or Series X. Look, man, the common person buying this stuff, they're gonna be confused by the names, bro. I mean, the Anbernic stuff is bad enough. Anbernic, the OG35XX, the 2024 version, which has a little plus on the back, and people might confuse it with the actual plus model, and then the H. So, anyways, a rumor is that there's going to be a black colorway, and if you want to see what that will look like, we can look at this picture from Daltonis. And I believe they used a spray. They didn't use the RIT dye, they used a spray for it. It looks really clean. Yeah, I think if there was a black option, people would definitely go for it. Now, we have some details for the ROG Ally X. This was posted by GeekFest84, and it comes from The Verge. The Verge article was written by Sean Hollister. So here are the new details that have been released. It's going to have the same screen, and it's going to have the same chipset. It's going to have double the RAM, I believe 32 gigabytes. It's going to start at 1 terabyte of hard drive space. And then it will also have a larger SSD slot, so you can more comfortably install those long format SSDs. And the thumbstick should be easier to replace. And also the micro SD card has been placed away from active cooling. So the reason why the SD card had a problem on the ROG Ally was hot air. The heat was being piped over the SD card reader, and so it would fry the SD card and or the reader eventually. And yeah, the one thing I don't like is there's a comment in this article. It's like a clip of an interview. So they were mentioning the SD card reader defect, and the guy was saying, "Oh no, we don't have any issues. We don't want people to think that's what we had to do." Meng says of moving the SD reader. We had to move things around the board to make them fit. And I was like, that is so disingenuous because people know there is a SD card problem if you own a device. There's a lot of people being impacted by it. Some people have had no problems, and that's fine. But a lot of people, like a significant portion of the consumers who bought it, have had problems. And that's funny because we have this post that came about a month ago. This was posted by Gap King in the ROG Ally subreddit. Zeus finally acknowledges the SD card reader defect. And here again, using very disingenuous language here, we have become aware that a small number of SD card readers I think there's a comment here. Yeah, Fragrant Cell has said small number. Yeah, anyways, the reason why they did this, and I understand why, is that if you omit responsibility, you become liable, so people can sue you. So I really don't like that about the US, where you can't admit that you made a mistake, otherwise you get sued. I wish it was changed a little bit, but that's why the official policy for most of these corporations is just to straight up deny. Just straight up deny, and they're just gonna lie to you. And it's not because just of the lawsuits. These corporations just don't care about us, and that's how it is. Okay, moving on, we have the pricing information as well. So this was posted by Tempura Style, and the article comes from Notebook Check and was written by Alex Alderson. The starting MSRP is going to be $100 higher. So the ROG Ally X is going to cost $800 US at launch. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be worth it for me. I do a lot of editing, as you can tell. I do a lot of tinkering around with code. So if I'm going to spend $800 on a device, it better be a laptop. I need that extra power. I need the keyboard. It's just a giant clamshell, if you will. I'm not going to buy a handheld for $800 when I need to do work on it. And if I'm going to have to bring a keyboard, a monitor, a dock, I'd rather get a laptop. But for other people, it might be worth that price. I think it's going to be worth it because your SD card isn't going to get fried. And if you have drift in the joystick, you can replace it yourself much more easier. And I think it's just going to be a lot less problems. So I think it's worth it to get the refresh if you're on the fence about getting an ROG Ally. Now, there's an update to Armory Crate coming out. This was posted by Secret Let 8637 in the ROG Ally subreddit. And yeah, I think it looks pretty nice. I mean, I don't really care how the interface looks. I'm more of a utility person. I don't really care about the aesthetics. But yeah, this should be rolling out. So for all owners of ROG Allies, you should get that new Armory Crate stuff. Now, there's some drama brewing about. So Gamers Nexus had, they're starting to release reviews on PC handhelds. And they had to RMA their ROG Ally. So what they did was, they acted like a regular consumer, and they had problems with the SD card reader and the joystick drifting, and they just RMA'd it for the joystick. And what happened was, they got charged $200 for the repair, and what they're going to do was replace the main board, because they're like, hey, there's a little scratch here, so we need to replace the main board to get and replace the display. And then we're going to have to charge you $200, which includes labor and the shipping fees. And that's ridiculous. That's disingenuous. And they only gave them like 3 days to respond. They were kind of pressuring them into paying for it because they were saying, hey, if you don't pay, we may return the unit disassembled to you. And that actually happened to somebody. So I just want to mention here that everyone's RMA experience isn't like this. There are some comments where they're like, I RMA'd 6 allies and they were all fine. Now, the fact that you have to RMA 6 devices is not a good thing. But the fact that, you know, they had an okay RMA experience is the point there. Some other people never had to RMA the devices and it just worked fine since, you know, they buy it from launch. But yeah, this is terrible and this is scummy, but the guy goes into why he thinks they did it, and I totally agree. This makes sense from a business perspective. If you think about it, the fix to the SD card reader is to get a new motherboard, because if you just replace the reader, it's still in the same place where the heat is being pumped to, so it's gonna fail eventually again. So instead of replacing that, they have to get a new motherboard, and the new motherboard has a new everything, you know. I mean, if you were talented enough, it's not that much of an issue to take the chip off and solder it back on, but you can mess something up there. So they're just replacing the entire motherboard, and that's expensive. So Asus is probably hemorrhaging money fixing all these ROG allies for free. So what they're probably doing, again, this is very dishonest, and it's not like they're doing it to get more money. It's probably to stop their heavy losses. Is to find ways to charge customers more money so they can cover the cost of the hardware. And they might have a policy where they do it for some people, not everyone. Because if everyone ran across this, then they would most definitely get sued later, probably. But yeah, so like that's scummy, but it makes sense because again, it's very expensive to replace the entire motherboard with everything on it. That's most of the device right there, other than the screen. Replacing the circuit boards for the joysticks as well. And I think that's why they're releasing this refresh, because instead of, you know, fixing everyone's motherboards, replacing entirely new mainboards there, they have a new device where probably it's not going to fail as much. And if anything fails, like the joysticks, you can replace it yourself and they could just mail you new joysticks. That sucks. And I'm not too angry, but like, it's a little bit sad, but the reality is when you buy a device, the manufacturer should include costs for fixing the device and RNA for the new device. So when people buy something, they only expect to pay the material costs and then maybe the manufacturing costs for the device. What you actually have to pay for, though, is if you want repairs for free, is you need people to pay a little bit extra to fund the cost of making repairs. So the fact that you have to ship it to a warehouse, the fact that you need a warehouse, you need to pay employees to fix a device, all that costs money. And the thing is, like, if you build a device properly in the first place, only a small percentage are going to fail to the point where you need to mail it in to have someone fix it for you. So the additional cost per person is going to be not that high, you know? But for this, there's a pretty large percentage of devices failing, so I can't imagine the amount of money they're losing. So, reverting to like a scammy behavior though is not the way. Just you gotta eat the loss. That was your fault for designing a faulty product to begin with. You should have spent more time in the RNA process, R&D process, not RNA. Okay, now we have the AYANEO Pocket S pricing, and it's yikes indeed. This was posted by Downvote Sandwich in the SBC Gaming subreddit. My goodness, the pricing is going from $559 to $769 for the 1080p version, and then $589 to $799 for the 1440p version. And if you were gonna get one, I think the 1440p version was the version to get. There's only one downside. It's not available anymore. So, I don't know why they did this, but shortly after the pre-orders went live, they're like, oh, sorry fellas, you wanted the 1440p? Guess what? It's no longer available. So, unfortunately, if you wanted one, I'm not sure if they're gonna ever re-release it, but it's gone now. So you'll have to settle for the 1080p. Now, this is massively overpriced for what it does. You can get the Odin 2 for $300, the base model. Why would you ever spend 3 times the amount almost for the most expensive version of the Pocket S? But there are some people that want it, and I agree with why they want it. They just want a more sleek and slim device. And the Pocket S is definitely slim and definitely sleek. Now, the only thing I'm worried about is that people who got the early review or like preview versions mentioned that the handle seemed to be overheating very easily. It's very slim, and if there's a heating problem, then I'm not sure if I could recommend people get it without waiting for initial reviews, because AYANEO's customer service is, for the most part, very terrible. I read the AYANEO subreddit, and obviously only people who have problems are going to post. And I'm not saying that all of AYANEO's devices are faulty, because if you have a good experience with it, you're not going to write anything in the subreddits. And there are people who have plenty of good experiences. But most of the customer support interactions have been massively negative. So just keep that in mind. Moving on with the topic of AYANEO, AYANEO is going to release a lot of information on May 18th. So only a few days after this video releases, we'll see details about their Game Boy Micro inspired device, as well as the Game Boy DMG inspired device. This was posted by Dr. NSQTR. And yeah, I think that looks pretty sleek. That looks like the Pocket S almost, but it's probably going to be smaller. Yeah, I'm just worried about the pricing because AYANEO is never cheap. We have a look at the DMG. I think that looks really nice though. This was posted by Retro Old Boy in the SBC Gaming subreddit. And there's like a little sneak peek, I guess. And yeah, that looks really nice. That looks comfortable. That kind of looks like a copy of the Analog Pocket. If that's a rear firing speaker though, I am going to be very sad because rear firing speaker is the worst out of all the speaker orientations. Front facing is ideal, side or bottom is okay, and rear firing is the worst because it's going to be tuned to be louder because it's facing away from you. And when I'm playing in an area where there's other people, I don't want to bother them. So I'm going to use headphones. But if it was front facing, I can kind of leave it on and have it be a little bit low. Rear facing is going to be blasting. So, and I like the comment, that'll be $600. If they can release it for $100, I'd be surprised. You know, that's the perfect price point for like a premium DMG model is roughly $100. Because for about $80-ish, $70-ish, you can get the FPGA Game Boy Color, and that's a solid device. That has emulation as well as being able to play the actual hardware cartridges. Now, obviously, it's hardware emulation, but yeah, like, why would I pay more for a device that does less? You know, it can't play the physical cartridges. So if it's priced low enough, this may be the first AYANEO product I actually pick up. I'm just broke. I can't afford their products. Alright, not to be confused with AYANEO, we have a new device from AYN. These are the people that made the Odin 2. And they are the same company as the company making the Retro Pocket 4 Pro. This was posted by Stelny and Nelnets in the SBC Gaming subreddit. And the initial teaser image was the weight, so 320 grams. That's roughly 100 grams lighter than the Odin 2. And 320 grams is still going to be a hefty device. It's still going to be weighty. Alright, so we have more little teaser images. This was posted by the whole effing show in the SBC Gaming subreddit. And it's details about the screen. I measured it. It's a 16:9 screen. So if you see reports of it being 3:2, those are mostly false reports because of a fan-made image, which was just a mock-up. It wasn't an actual teaser. So it's going to have mini LEDs, which means that HDR is supposed to look better on the screen. 1100 nits of brightness is super bright. Laptops usually have 400 to 600. For the lower end budget laptops. And all that tech speak about the monitor specs can be fudged to be higher than it actually is, so take that with a grain of salt. But what those numbers are saying is that the screen is supposed to be really good. So I think that's pretty exciting. And finally, one last image. So we have the full picture, and it looks like a PlayStation Vita, which looks really cool. So this user, Redo or Redo27 in the SBC Gaming subreddit. Basically what they did was they took the teaser image and then resized it until the thumbsticks were roughly the same size. because AYN seems to use the same thumbsticks across all their devices. And so we can see that it's going to be smaller than the Odin 2 and roughly the same size as a Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. And the only thing I'm a little bit confused about is all the comments were saying that it's not going to be a competitor to the Odin 2. So they were asking in the Discord, and officials in the Discord were saying it's not a competitor to the Odin 2. So since it's lighter and a little bit smaller, I'm going to guess that it's probably less powerful. So is it going to be... I feel like they wouldn't release a device that's going to compete against the Retro Pocket 4 Pro. You know, it's going to cannibalize their own lineup. So I'm going to guess it's going to be a little bit better than the Retro Pocket 4 Pro, but worse than the Odin 2 in terms of performance. I mean, that's still a little weird in that the 4 Pro and the Odin 2 are like perfectly spaced apart in terms of performance, where like if you want everything, you get Odin 2, and if you want something smaller and just solid PS2 and GameCube, you get the 4 Pro. It's kind of weird that you have somewhere like a device in the middle, because it's going to be very close to the Odin 2 or the 4 Pro either way. So I don't think it's going to be worse than the 4 Pro, but we'll see. Kind of curious about this device and what it's going to be like. Finally, the last video, we have this from Macho Nacho Productions. I really like this YouTube channel, but Funny Playing has released a new motherboard for the Game Boy Advance, and the Game Boy Advance is quickly becoming my personal favorite system of all time. I think it's the perfect mix of portability and having enough features where the games look and feel and sound great. I think it's a great mix of having games being very accessible and playable, as well as having enough depth and complexity to offer a little bit more to players wanting it. The only thing that I would want from a Game Boy Advance is having 4 face buttons instead of 2. That would give you a lot more options in how you control games. Like, you know, if you wanted to play a Zelda game, it's just easier if you have 4 face buttons. Anyways, this mod is going to be very high skill in terms of making sure nothing breaks. You're going to remove the CPU and the RAM from the original Game Boy Advance, and you're going to transfer it over to the new motherboard. And the motherboard has fancy features. I personally don't like lights on my device. If you wanted it, there's a lot of them available. But yeah, this is pretty cool. I think it's pretty neat. I would like to attempt this one of these days when I feel more confident about my soldering skills. Okay, that's gonna be it. Wow, this is my second time recording this, and it's still roughly an hour long. The original take was roughly an hour and 40 minutes. I removed a lot of fluff from it, and I added some new updates to the RG35XXSP that came out, as well as the AYANEO stuff. And yeah, it's still roughly over an hour, so... Man, I'm not gonna have fun editing this because this microphone is very sensitive, and it catches pretty much everything. And I've been making little tiny micro cuts in my timeline to clean up the audio as much as possible. I get like, manually removing mouth clicks and anything popping. There's a lot of problems, so I need to work on my mic technique so I don't have to deal with that. But for now, it is what it is. But that's gonna be it. Thank you so much for dropping by and watching. I really do appreciate it. And once again, thank you for dropping by and leaving all the kind comments. Thank you for being patient. I am traveling right now, which is why I'm not able to release content as quickly as as I used to. But yeah, it's gonna be it. Yeah, so many handles coming out. There's a couple that I left out that I'll include in the next episode. They're more like rare or like odd devices that aren't gonna be available for the masses to purchase, but I think they're kind of neat. That's gonna be it. If you guys need help with anything, please feel free to let me know. You can leave a comment down below. And as always, hope you guys are staying safe and sane out there, and catch you guys next time.